Chapter 14. Lucantonio Rende di Bisignano. You come to see how we bear our misfortune, but I would have you know the difference between your loss and ours. In wresting Cyprus from you, we deprived you of your arm. In defeating our fleet, you have only shaved our beard. An arm, when cut off, cannot grow again, but a shorn beard will grow all the better for the razor. Grand Vizier Mehmed Sokulu under Solomon II at the issue of the Battle of Lepanto, October 7th, 1571. When Damianos and Constanzo attended the ordination in Rome, it was with pomp and pageantry that Antonio was seeing his dream come true. It took 3 days of preparation before he finally knelt down before Pope Urban III. He nearly fainted from joy and anticipation. Yet once the ceremonies were over and it was time to leave, Damianos and Constanzo joined the newly ordained archbishop in the guests' chambers at the Vatican.
"How do you feel now?"
Damianos asked Antonio. Elated and much worried, Antonio answered, taking a seat in one of the chairs of the sitting room. "Please sit," he added, indicating another 2 seats facing him.
"Worried? Why would that be?" Constanzo asked.
"I have heard that you are not happy, Constanzo. You are much younger than I am, and not serving the Lord with gladness in your heart, isn't that right?"
"Who could have said such a thing to you?" Constanzo sounded offended.
"We have travelled a long way together, and I believe it is time you go to Salerno and fulfil your destiny."
"And pray tell, what desire would that be?"
Damianos chortled.
"Do not fool yourself into believing that you could hold on to a life you do not want, or be somewhere you don't deserve to be, Constanzo."
The latter lowered his gaze.
"Your cousin here is right. You need to shed the vestment of the monk and don those of the man who needs to carry on with a working life in Salerno."
"And please do not think that I am in any way banishing you, Constanzo," Antonio added. "I am simply acknowledging my own selfishness. For years you have remained at my side, attended to my every whim silently, while attempting to ignore your own needs and fulfillment. God will need you to take your leave shortly, Constanzo."
"And what am I supposed to do in Salerno, Antonio? I have not lived a secular life for many years. What could I possibly accomplish?"
"You will probably find a maiden crossing your path, Constanzo, and as for tasks, I believe there are many tasks an uncle of a bride-to-be is to perform. Perhaps there will be a post awaiting you in a merchant's house. God will know when he has in store for you, Constanzo."
"When will all of that likely to occur?"
"I believe once the bishop's house in Constanzo is in order, you will be relieved of your vows and free to travel to Salerno. However, in the meantime, Damianos, I believe we have a long road to return to Consenza, haven't we?"
"Yes, Your Eminence. I suggest spending the next 2 days and nights in Rome before leaving the Vatican. I will make the arrangements."
2 days later, as they were about to leave the Vatican in a carriage that much resembled the one they used 20-some-odd years earlier, when the Red Cardinal, then a young bishop, accompanied them to Salerno, the door of the archbishop was opened to a young messenger. "Your Eminence," the traveller said, kneeling onto one knee, "the message in my hand is from your faraway family in Lebanon. I was directed to Rome when I could not find you at your last place of residence." "Please stand, young man," Antonio said. "What is your name?" "Monsieur." "Your Eminence," he replied, handing the folded and sealed missive to the archbishop. "Ah, yes, I recognize the name. Are you a relative of Al-Maluf family, descendants of Andamundurus, the Ghassanid exiled prince?" Monsieur bowed his head. "I am, as you say, Your Eminence." "Very good. You shall then accompany me, my cousin, and our friend Damianos to Consenza." "May I ride on the horseback beside your carriage, so that I would have a mode of transport back to the vessel that is waiting for me on the southern coast?" "If you prefer, but I can assure you the bishop in Consenza will have another horse for you when needed." "Very well then, Your Eminence, I will accompany you." When Monsieur left the chamber, Antonio sat down to read the message. His brows furrowed. He couldn't readily understand the reason for such a letter being addressed to him. It read, "On the 17th day of October 1571, some 5 years about Gaspar Ricciulli, your great uncle, made his famous speech in front of the synod. A battle raged at sea at the front steps of Italy. However, the southern European Catholic maritime states in the manner of the Holy League of vessels defeated the main fleet of the Ottoman Empire. After many hours of battle and many losses of lives in the Gulf of Corinth off the coast of Greece, the enemy was ultimately vanquished. Nevertheless, the enemy, resentment in his heart, has expressed his displeasure, saying, 'In wresting Cyprus from you, we deprived you of an arm. In defeating our fleet, you have only shaved our beard. An arm, when cut off, cannot grow again, but the shorn beard will grow all the better for the razor. This means reprisal is near in time. Vigilance remains your best weapon. In light of these past events, it is now your duty, Antonio Ricciulli, Archbishop of Consenza in Reggio di Calabria, to maintain and continue to secure the peace of God over the region of southern Italy. You have known for some time that your ancestry has seen its birth and mostly its growth in the land of Horan. There is a man who is waiting for you on the coast of Calabria. His name is Lucantonio Rende di Bisignano. He resides at the Roseto Capo Spulico, the castle you have recently visited, I believe. He will have some of the answers you seek. May the Lord bless you always. Sheikh Abdallah bin Simor al-Akori. Dressed in white clothing, his head of black hair covered with a red cap, Al-Mansur couldn't have been more pleased to walk through the corridors of the Vatican in company of an archbishop, probably a distant cousin of his. Damianos showed no surprise when he saw the boy walk alongside Antonio, but it was not the case for Constanzo. "And who might you be?" he demanded, forearms crossed in the sleeves of his habit. "I am Al-Mansur, father. I came to bring a message from our country to his eminence." "A message, you say? What sort of message?" Constanzo asked, his gaze switching from the young man to Antonio. "Let me show you, once we have boarded the carriage, Constanzo." Antonio's gaze was stern and requested no further discussion.
"How was your journey, Monsieur?"
Damianos asked as they walked toward the courtyard where the carriage was waiting for them. "Difficult, Damianos, very difficult indeed." Upon hearing the young man's recognition of the shepherd's name, Antonio turned around. "Do you know this man?" he asked Monsieur. The latter nodded. "Yes, our family does, your eminence. He has been a guide and a counsellor to our ancestors, and his words are to be respected." "Why didn't you say anything about this?" Antonio was visibly taken aback.
"My knowledge of your family was acquired a long time ago, Antonio. The matter of time does not concern the Lord," Damianos answered, "but the matter of faithfulness to his guidance does. And as his shepherd, as you know, I will guide the flocks he designates for me to guard and protect."
Antonio seemed satisfied with that explanation for the time being. "Very well then, let's not delay our departure any longer. We will stop to eat and rest when necessary along the way. I feel tired and do not want to be exhausted when we arrive at our destination." It was the first time Constanzo had heard his cousin complain. He didn't want to worry, but he decided to keep an eye on the older man nonetheless. As soon as they were as comfortably ensconced as possible in the carriage, Damianos asked,
"May we see the missive you received now?"
Of course, Antonio replied, taking the folded parchment out of a pocket fold of his robe. He handed it to Damianos, who was sitting beside Constanzo and across from Antonio and Al-Mansur. When both men had read the letter in its entirety, Damianos said,
"I believe the Baron will be expecting us, Antonio. The Roseto Capo Spulico is only a couple of days' travel from Consenza. Would you prefer to go there first before going to Consenza?"
Antonio shook his head. "No, Damianos, I have to attend to the affairs of the bishopric first before allowing myself the luxury of responding to my great uncle's request." Reading the letter again, Constanzo asked, "What sort of reprisals are we likely to expect from the Caliph, do you think?"
"It is difficult to say at this point,"
Damianos answered.
"I believe the Caliph is not as interested in Italy as he is in Western and Northern Europe. He has tried, but he will not succeed in capturing the country of the Church."
I seem to recall that Madras was already searching for a monastery along the coast of Calabria when he first came to Italy from Sicily as far back as 1,000 years ago. First the Byzantines and now the Ottomans. I have to ask, why Italy?
"It is not the land itself, but its location, but its advance into the Mediterranean, which is attractive to the enemy, Antonio. Since the Ottomans now have conquered Cyprus, Italy will need to be stronger than ever in its resistance against the invader."
3 days of leisurely travels later, the three men and the boy arrived at the Duomo, the Consenza Cathedral. In awe at the 400-year-old edifice, the young Al-Mansur, who had never seen such an ancient structure, asked Damianos how old it was.
"Some say it was constructed in the first half of the 11th century, but there is no record of that being the case,"
the shepherd replied. "Why can't anyone tell?"
"Because an earthquake destroyed it in 1184.
It was rebuilt afterwards?
"Yes, Monsieur."
"Why don't you call me Ali? My father does, and my brothers do too," the young man asked, looking up pleadingly at Antonio, who was walking beside him. "Yes, why don't we do that?" Antonio agreed, walking down the centre aisle toward the altar. They stopped, and only Antonio walked up to the priest, who was coming to greet him. "Your Eminence," he said, and genuflected. We have been expecting you. I thank our Lord every day for his precious decision to bring you back to our midst. Pleased to hear that you are waiting for our arrival. Antonio replied, turning around to wave to his companions. Come, come, he said. Father Bellini, I wish to introduce my cousins to you. Constanzo, a monk from the monastery of Caserta, and Almansur from our family in Lebanon. Father Bellini raised an eyebrow, but didn't dare question his eminence. Lastly, may I introduce you to Damianos, our companion and guide? Welcome, welcome, Father Bellini said somewhat cheerfully, although his gaze still rested on the young man. This way, my brothers, I have prepared your chambers and the guest rooms for your company, except that perhaps the young Almansur could find comfortable bedding in the stable. No, Antonio exclaimed. My cousin is not to be turned away to sleep with the horses or the pigs, Father Bellini. I find the suggestion offensive. I am so sorry, Your Eminence. No need, but in future I would like you to remember that my family has found its roots in the land of Horan, the land consecrated by Ezekiel in the era where the Israelites were searching for a propitious piece of land on which to raise their descendants. The Ghassanids, as they are known throughout the East, are my ancestors, Father Bellini, and I will demand your respect toward them and toward this boy in particular. Again, please forgive me, Your Eminence. I have very little knowledge of the world. Yes, it seems so. Therefore I will see it that the brothers of the bishopric learn history to have better insight into their future. Almansur was to remember the words of his cousin long after his return to Lebanon. The Ghassanids never forget the noble branch of the Richelieu family, thanks to Archbishop Antonio Ricciulli.